Okay, throw your name on here. It is currently first hour. All right, 6.3 notes, discriminant and the quadratic formula. So this is ultimately the thing that you will always be able to use. You can always use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is what goes on these first two blanks. So quadratic formula can be used, there should be the word to there, to find the zeros of any quadratic function. Jack. Away. Alright, so it can be used to find the zeros of any quadratic function. So, doesn't matter if there is or isn't a number in front of x squared. Doesn't matter if there is or isn't a b value. You can use it any time. We, by the end of this unit, are going to want to have the quadratic formula memorized. It is x equals negative b, some people say the opposite of b, plus or minus, so both plus and minus, the big square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. When we get to the back of the note sheet, I will play a delightful little song for you once we start using the whole thing. On the back of the note sheet, we're going to be using the whole thing. On the front of the note sheet, we're going to focus just on how many zeros we have. So, moving down, the part of the quadratic formula underneath this square root, so underneath this big square root, that b squared minus 4ac, that is called the discriminant. D-I-S-C-R-I-M I-N-A-N-T. Kind of a long word. So that is our discriminant. It can always tell us how many 0/x-intercept/solutions, because we're using all of those interchangeably, a quadratic has. So if we find just that piece, just the discriminant, it tells us how many solutions, or zeros, or x-intercepts, whatever we want to call it, a quadratic has. So that discriminant is just the b squared minus 4ac. So on this blank right here, we're going to write that. We're going to go ahead and put the b in parentheses, though. So in parentheses, put your b, and then put squared minus 4ac. So that is what we are going to start with using. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're just going to be plugging in A, B, and C to that and seeing what we get as our discriminant. So our first problem here, our A value is 5. Our B value is negative 8. And our C value is 5. And we are plugging into that formula b squared minus 4ac every single time. So b squared is negative 8 squared minus 4. The 4 is just part of the formula. You use it every time. Times my A value times my C value. So my A value is 5 and my C value also happens to be 5. So it's 4 times 5 times 5. Okay, from here, you have two options. You can work it out in two pieces, or you can work it out all in one big piece in your calculator. So I'm going to show you both. So if we were to work it out in two pieces, we would do the negative 8 squared first. Negative 8 squared means negative 8 times negative 8, so that's 64. And then we would do minus 4 times 5 times 5 as well. So it would be minus 4 times 5 is 20, times another 5 is 100. So it would be 64 minus 100. So you can do the b squared and the 4ac, and then you can subtract them. So now, when I go to subtract them, 64 minus 100 is negative 36. So that's one option, is doing the two pieces kind of by hand, is what I would call that. The other option of what you're able to do is you can put this whole negative 8 squared minus 4 times 5 times 5 in your calculator. You got to do a couple things, though. You got to make sure you put that negative 8 in parentheses and put the squared outside. And then you've got to make sure you do minus 4, not negative 4. Because if you do negative 4, it just multiplies everything together and you get a really big number. So minus 4 times 5 times 5. So make sure you're using subtraction for that minus. If I hit enter, I get negative 36. Hey, any questions about that first one? Okay, we will come back to this number of solutions thing later. Let's do a couple more. So we've got 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. My a value is 4. My b value is 12. My c value is 9. So just a, b, c is where I get those. The formula I'm using every time is b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to plug in and do 12 squared. So that's my b squared minus 4 times my a value is 4 times my c value is 9. Okay. Going from there, my b squared right here, that's going to be 12 squared. So I'm going to do it both ways, always. So 12 squared is 144. That's just 12 times 12, 144. And then 4 times 4 times 9 is too early on a Monday for me to do that in my head. 4 times 4 times 9 is also 144. So I get 144 minus 144. So anything minus itself is 0. If I wanted to have done the whole thing in my calculator, I could do 12 squared minus 4 times 9 and not had to do it separately at all. This is a good time to do this as an example. If you got negative 20,736 instead, it's because you used a negative key right there instead of the minus key. So 0 is the correct one. I'm going to clear that off. So 0 is correct. So make sure if you got negative 20,000 something, that's why. Hey, last one I've got of just the discriminant, and then we're going to talk about how many solutions different discriminants gives us. Last one I've got, a is 2. What is my b value on this one? Negative 1. So I've got negative x there. There's an imaginary negative 1. So negative 1 is my B value, and my C value is negative 3. Okay, so plugging into the same formula we've been plugging in this entire time. B squared, so negative 1 squared, minus 4 times my A value is 2, times my C value is negative 3. Okay, I've got negative 1 squared here, which means negative 1 times negative 1. Negative times negative is positive, so I've got positive 1. And then this part I think I can do in my head. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 times the negative 3. So like, even though this is minus, we're treating it as a negative right now, because this negative times this negative is going to end up being positive. So the 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So I get 1 plus 24, which is 25. If all of those negatives and all of that multiplication stress you out, you can do it on your calculator. So you can do, in your calculator, negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. I get 25. Okay, any questions at the moment for the good of the cause? All right, so if you are going to do them in your calculator, we do still want you to write down this step of work, so what you're typing into your calculator and your answer. So you obviously wouldn't have that step if you did it in your calculator, but you still need the work and your answer. Work, answer, work, answer. So like the substituting it in would be your work. All right, let's chat about the number of solutions real quick. And this goes back to our quick write. So on your quick write, when I asked you guys what the square root of a negative number was, the square root of negative 25 on your quick write, how many square roots did it have? None? 0. If we have a negative discriminant, we have 0 solutions. So then it matches up with this table down here. There are no real solutions if your discriminant is negative. That's going to make it so that when we're doing problems, if you get a negative answer for your discriminant, then you just get to stop and not do the rest of the problem. So that actually ends up making it less work for you. Okay, because remember, these are the numbers that would be under the square root, so we have to be able to take a square root of them. When we took the square root of 0, how many answers did we get? Just 1, because the square root of 0 is just 0. It's not positive or negative, so we only have 1 solution. So if your discriminant is equal to 0, you have 1 real solution when your discriminant is 0. And then our last little box, when we have a positive discriminant, which is what we've been seeing, you guys just haven't realized it, is the square root of 25. So when we have a square root there, it's positive and negative. So we have 2 solutions. So you have 2 real solutions when your discriminant is positive. So, you guys will see more of this towards the end of the unit, and you'll see more of this in Algebra 2. But when you have no real solutions, that means your graph never crosses the x-axis or touches it. 1 real solution means it would just touch it 1 time. And then 2 real solutions, I showed you a picture of that in 6.1. That means it's going to cross over twice. So, we will see more of that later this unit, and we will see more of that for the end of this year, or in Algebra 2. But what you guys need to know right now is this -0 positive? Because when we flip over this sheet of paper and use the quadratic formula, you need to know how many solutions you're going to have. Okay, any questions right now? Okay, flip this over then, and we are going to start actually using the quadratic formula to find the zeros. It's going to seem like a lot of work here the first few times, but I promise it will be a good solution for you because it always works the exact same way, first of all. And second of all, if you aren't liking the factoring that we did in 6.2, this is your way to not have to do that factoring. You still have to do it on the 6.2 assignment, but then on like the test, you could use this method instead, unless we tell you explicitly. So before we start using the quadratic formula, it is important that I share with you the best way to memorize it. So the best way to memorize it is to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. I'm not going to sing it for you because I think I'm tone deaf. So let me find it for you with someone else singing it. I promise you, the sooner you commit this to memory, the easier your life's going to be. So this is the quadratic formula to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel by someone else other than me. If it'll load, and if I have volume. Okay, I gotta fix my volume. It's coming out of this computer instead of this screen, so please hold. It should be right here. And then I need to go to you and then go back and test that. There we go. Part. I like how this picture pops up. Okay, so thank you to him for singing because I promise you didn't want to hear me do that. But I will continue playing that to you, and if I have to, I will sing it at you if you keep messing or if you aren't putting the right things in the right spot. But I promise you, when I was a freshman in high school, my math teacher brought in a cassette player and played it because she and her husband recorded it with him playing the guitar and her playing the piano at home. And that is how I learned the quadratic formula. And still, every time, like when I'm sitting here making the answer key for your assignment, I still sing it in my head. It's one of those things where you are going to use the quadratic formula for every math class you take for the rest of your life. So having it committed to memory is important. It's like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's the one thing that you need to know. Okay, so we're going to dive in and start doing this. So we already learned how to find the discriminant. That's the first thing that we are going to do on all of these. So we've got our quadratic function here. 2, 9, 7 are my A, my B, and my C. Okay, we will always start by doing the B squared minus 4AC. So B squared on this one is going to be 9 squared minus 4 times my A value's 2 times my C value is 7. And we can either do that piece by piece. So 9 squared would be 81 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 7 is 56. And I have to do that in my head. It's a lot. Or I can just plug it into my calculator. 9 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7. And I get 25. There's a box down there. Or there's an open box back there already. Okay, so I get my discriminant as 25. Is 25 positive, negative, or 0? Is 25 positive, negative, or 0? Is it a positive number or a negative number? Positive. Okay, so if we get a discriminant that is positive, we are going to have 2 real solutions. If we have 1 or 2 real solutions, that means we need to keep going. So now we are going to keep going. So we are going to use this formula to keep going. We have x equals negative b, so my b value is 9, so it's going to be negative 9 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. But I just did b squared minus 4ac, so I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to use the 25. So I don't have to redo that work. All over 2a, so that's going to be 2 times 2. Any questions about plugging the things I know in? Okay, then we can keep going. So I'm going to keep my negative 9. I'm going to keep my plus or minus. What's the square root of 25? 5. And also negative 5, so that's why I have that plus or minus sign there. That's why that's part of the equation, or the formula, is because I know I'm going to need to use it. And then on the bottom of my fraction, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, any questions right now? Okay, once you are down to 3 numbers, so your negative b plus or minus, whatever the square root of your discriminant was, and then you've multiplied together your 2a, you are going to split, and you're going to find your 2 different answers, because we can't do any more work together. So I'm going to over here write both of them. It's going to be negative 9 plus 5 over 4. And then my other answer is going to come from negative 9 minus 5. I just miswrote that. I accidentally put a 4. Minus 5 over 4. So when I say plus or minus, I mean at the end, I'm going to do a plus version and a minus version. So I'm splitting it out into my 2 different versions. And then I need to simplify the top of these guys and then reduce them if I can. So negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4 over 4. And negative 4 divided by 4 just divides out. So anything divided by itself is 1. So negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. So that is one of my zeros. Okay, then for this guy, negative 9 minus 5. So negative 9 minus another 5 puts me at negative 14 over 4. I cannot divide 14 by 4, but I can divide them both by 2. So I can reduce that fraction. Negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I get negative 7 halves. It's a weird looking 7, sorry. So negative 7 over 2 is my other zero. Okay. Any questions at the moment? Okay, we're going to just keep doing examples then, because this is a process that it always works the exact same way. So it's not like factoring where you have to pick what multiplies to this and adds to this and you could make a mistake. You just plug in the numbers and go. We just need to get practice plugging the right things in the right spots and doing the right operations. Okay, we've got 3 more then, so let's keep going. This next one I've got x squared minus 4x plus 4. My a value is 1. My b value is negative 4. And my c value is positive 4. And then I am ready to do b squared minus 4ac. So b squared is going to be negative 4 squared minus 4 times my a value is 1 times my c value is 4. Okay. So I could do it by hand. So negative 4 squared. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. And then 4 times 1 times 4 is also 16. So I get 16 minus 16. It's going to be 0. Or I do it in my calculator. Negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. And I get 0. So either way you do it, you get that your discriminant is 0. If my discriminant is equal to 0, I have one real solution. So right now, if you would like to cross off one of your answer blanks, you can. That's why the S on zeros is in parentheses, because sometimes you only have one. All right, so let's find that one real solution now. So we still use this whole quadratic formula. We do x equals negative b. So I have a negative that's part of my formula, and then my b value is negative 4. So I've got negative 4 right now, which we'll deal with in a second. Plus or minus the square root. We already did b squared minus 4ac, and we got 0. And that is all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. Okay. So that was just me plugging things in. We got all sorts of weird things to deal with now. What is negative 4? Positive 4. So you can know that since there's a negative in the formula, the opposite, if your b value is negative, then it's just going to flip to be positive. So I've got positive 4 here, plus or minus, the square root of 0 is 0. And that is all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, then the next piece of this, we would normally split, but 4 plus 0 and 4 minus 0 are the same thing, and that's why I only have one solution. It's because 4 plus 0, 4 minus 0, same thing, one solution. So I'm just going to put 4, because adding or subtracting 0 is not going to change anything, over 2. And then I can just divide that out. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I have 1, 0, and it is 2. Okay. Any questions at the moment? Okay, we are going to keep going then. So we've got 2 more, but you won't have to do all of both of them. We've got A, B, and C. On this next one, what is my A value? 3. What is my b value? Negative 8. And what is my c value? Negative 3. So we can go through and we can do b squared minus 4ac. That's what's going to happen every time to start. So b squared is negative 8 squared minus 4 times my a value is 3 times my c value is negative 3. Okay, you can do it by hand. You can do it in your calculator. If I were to do it by hand, negative 8 squared is positive 64. And then negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 times another negative 3 becomes positive 36. So I get 64 plus 36, which ends up being 100. Or I can do it in my calculator. I can do negative 8 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 3. And I get 100. So either way, you get 100. Okay, since my discriminant is positive, that means, so my discriminant's 100, I have 2 real solutions. So this one, you have to solve it all the way out for both solutions. Okay, so let's go ahead and find those solutions. We have x equals negative b, so it's going to be negative 8. If you want to write the double negative, you can. If you want to just know it automatically flips to positive, you can. Plus or minus the square root of our b squared minus 4ac, which is 100, all over 2a, which is going to be 2 times 3. Any questions about plugging things in? Okay, so then we can go from there. Negative 8 is positive 8. Plus or minus square root of 100 is 10. And then on the bottom, 2 times 3 is 6. So if and when we have 2 real solutions, this is the time to now split. So we have 8 plus or minus 10. We're going to split into 2 different fractions. We're going to do 8 plus 10 over 6. We'll do 8 minus 10 over 6. Eight plus 10 is 18 over 6, which divides out evenly to be 3. It's one of my zeros. And 8 minus 10 over 6. 8 minus 10 is negative 2 over 6. That does not divide out evenly, but I can reduce it. 2 out of 6 is the same as 1 out of 3. So I would divide the top and bottom by 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I get negative 1/3 as my answer. Okay. Any questions on that guy? Okay, so we've had 2 problems where we saw 2 answers. We've had 1 problem where we only got 1 answer. We have one last example that I suspiciously did not leave enough room for us to find any answers, so I wonder how many answers we're going to have. Let's do it. We've got 2, 8, and 10 as my A, B, and C. Okay, so I'm doing b squared minus 4ac. So that's going to be 8 squared minus 4 times my a value is 2 times my c value is 10. Eight squared is 64. And then 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 10 is 80. So I get 64 minus 80. Class is not over. They just didn't fix the bells. So we do 64 minus 80, or in your calculator, you can do 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times 10. I get negative 16. So if my discriminant is negative, then at that point I get to stop. I have to write down. There are no real solutions. There are 0 real solutions. We left the blanks on here, but you can cross them off, and you're done. So if you get a negative discriminant, there are no real solutions. There are technically solutions to the quadratic, but they're not real solutions. They're imaginary. But we don't know about imaginary numbers yet, so we'll worry about that in 2 years in Algebra 2. So there is the world's tiniest fold and glue here tab, because I had to fit a lot of stuff on here. You guys can go ahead and glue in your notes, and then we have the rest of class today to work.